The BMW 1M is a car that bridges the gap between the past and the future. At least when it debuted about 10 years ago, that was my impression. Looking back on it now, it represents perhaps the pinnacle of BMW M analog performance, and it really set the stage for the big power turbo cars of the present. In fact, the BMW 1M wasn't even approved by the BMW board. It was started as a skunkworks project by BMW M, and when they presented it to the board for approval, it was already kind of into development. Typical BMW M car development takes several years, but because this was kind of done quickly and by a small team, this was put together in less than 2 years, about 18 months. And one of the things that characterizes this car is the really muscular fenders. And it only comes in a manual. The 1M only came in 3 colors: Valencia Orange, which is the iconic color used in the marketing materials, Alpine White, and Sapphire Black. The interior came in any color that you wanted, as long as it was black with orange stitching. And in fact, if you could provide a VIN to BMW to prove that you actually owned a BMW 1M, they would make you a custom shirt with the orange stitching on it and a BMW logo on the front and your name embroidered on the sleeve. And like the interior, it didn't really matter what color your BMW 1M was. The only color that the shirt came in was black and orange, the iconic colors, so I had to get this. Prime BMW douche, sanctioned by BMW. The interior has got Alcantara everywhere. It's in the door panels, of course, with orange stitching. It is across the dashboard. It is in the shift boot, and it's also on the hood over the gauge cluster. Now, back in 2011, this was actually quite unusual. I don't think there was really very many cars with Alcantara over the gauges. Now it's a little bit more common. But remember, this is 2011, and this is a sub $50,000 car when it came out. This is an old school performance car. This really harkens back to sort of the feel of the E46. And what I really liked about the E46 is the steering in particular. New cars have electric steering systems, and with that is an inherent lack of feel. This is very good. This is a hydraulic unit, and there is a lot of feel. In fact, some people said that the steering was a little too light when this came out, that it was a little bit lacking, but I disagree. Looking back in retrospect, this steering is very, very good. The suspension and brakes are straight up from an E92 BMW M3. And this is a very good gearbox. A lot of BMWs tend to have that sort of notchy, vague feel. Not this one. The transmission is cribbed from a BMW 135i, but it has a short throw shifter. It's pretty good. And you got orange stitching. Traditionally, M cars would get their own bespoke engine, which would be unique to the M car. However, this got the N54 engine, the first mass-produced inline-six turbo from BMW, and it was actually used in several other models. The N54 engine. Full throttle. Kind of runs out of breath at the top end, but it's still pretty quick even in today's day and age. It's certainly not blindingly fast, but it does make 335 horsepower, 370 pound-feet of torque in overboost mode. I know naturally aspirated engines today do just about that, but for the time it was pretty significant. And this car is based on the BMW M135, but it has significantly wider haunches, and this rear bumper is unique to the car too, as well as the whole front bodywork. And it also comes with LED taillights, but they're not full LEDs. There's actually an incandescent bulb in there as well. The limited slip differential is from a BMW M3. So this is really a parts bin special. That doesn't mean it's bad, but it is far from perfect. In my opinion, they never really got the suspension properly dialed in. I know some people are going to disagree with that, but Randy Popst, who reviewed it early on, didn't really like it very much. This is a fairly stiff car, and the wheelbase is pretty short on this. So it certainly has very good lateral grip when you're in a corner. But in the city, it's a little bit bouncy, it's a little bit jouncy, you tend to get bounced around. The balance and the dynamics of the M3 are actually superior to this car because it's a longer wheelbase, and the suspension components were developed specifically for the M3. So with the shorter development cycle, I don't think they quite got this right. When the 1M came out, there was actually a split in the community between people who are really enthusiastic for it, the fact that it was a manual, and the people that were looking forward to the future and really liked the BMW DCT. So a lot of potential buyers actually passed on the 1M and got an M3 instead, saying it was the superior car. But here we are 10 years later, and only one of these is really considered a true BMW classic. And I know that's a controversial statement, but it's true. The rear end tends to move around a little bit, especially when you're on power or you're really much closer to the limit. You definitely can feel the back end squirming around a little bit, and especially over like bumps and frost heaves and big road whumps, imperfections, the back end will move around a little bit and get a little bit loose. Now, because of that, it is sort of a drift special. It is a very easy car to get sideways, especially if you're taking it on the track. And you have to be a bit of an experienced driver to really take advantage of them and not crash them. So these cars have a little bit of history. This is not my first 1M, in fact. There was a very unfortunate accident involving a cat sitter who took my first 1M out and managed to put it on the roof. So this is actually my replacement 1M. And because of incidents like that, there are a lot less 1Ms available for sale now than there were initially. The 1M is actually a very limited production car. Early on, BMW decided to produce 2,700 units only, but because of their guerrilla marketing campaign, which was very effective, there was a lot of demand, and ultimately about 6,300 were produced worldwide, and it's a 1-year only model run. It's just a 2011 model. Ultimately, BMW imported about 740 cars to the US, 220 for Canada, and 450 for the UK. This was BMW's first mass production inline-six turbo engine. Actually has 2 turbos on it, predated the twin scroll technology and was sort of a test bed for it. You can make a lot of power out of these engines. This one is completely stock, but people are pushing up to 700 horsepower out of these. It is an open deck design, and I know a lot of people have had some trouble with their N54s over the years, but this particular one for me has been absolutely trouble-free, and it's still a really fun engine to drive considering it has made it to a manual transmission. BMW actually had a very effective social media marketing campaign, and that is how they got interest in the car initially. There was in fact an official representative from BMW who was in the forums on BimmerPost. Scott26 said, "The M1," they clearly hadn't decided on the name of the car yet, "will not feature a V8. That remains exclusive to the M3. The engine is based on the updated N55 6-cylinder, but reconfigured by the M division." So this guy was in the forums, he was posting little hints here and there, and everybody was hanging on his every word, and it was very effective in getting the word out on this skunkworks project. The campaign was so effective that initially dealers were asking up to $10,000 over MSRP. Remember, this is 2011, 10 years ago. I know a lot of people have got nothing but effusive praise for the 1M, and certainly overall it's a great experience to drive. There's a lot of input, a lot of feedback. It's very integrated, it's very organic, but the suspension and the ride is definitely not the best part of this car. The 1M doesn't follow the naming convention of the rest of the M line, where you've got the M2, the M3, the M4, where the M is in front of the number. Here it's reversed because BMW didn't want to step on the toes of the legendary M1 supercar from the late 70s and the early 80s. And in fact, that is reflected in the badge, where it just says M. The 1M is a special car because of its place in history, and it represents the first non-bespoke M car, and also it was a 1-year model run only. I love the fact that this was a car not developed by a committee. It was a small number of engineers within BMW M who created it in a short timeline. It's a car filled with passion and a desire to make a car not for the masses, but for real enthusiasts. My name is Eric. If you enjoyed this video, thanks for watching. Please subscribe and all that good stuff. See you in the next one.